On the night of February the 19th, drones struck the Syzran Oil Refinery in Russia's Samara region, causing a fire at the site. Meanwhile, Ukraine is working on developing its own guided bombs. Ukrainian military expert Serhiy Zguret says that Ukraine continues to defend its front lines while striking Russia's oil industry behind the lines, as the war of attrition has various dimensions. On February the 19th, the Syzran Oil Refinery in Russia's Samara region, about 800 kilometers from Ukraine, was attacked. This distance no longer surprises us, which indicates that Ukraine has enough drones capable of reaching such distances to destroy Russian targets. This is now a systematic effort. We know that this is not the first oil refinery to be targeted by Ukrainian drones. In fact, the Syzran refinery was attacked last year, and the structure responsible for oil processing was disabled. Russia restored this system, and now, for the second time, Ukrainian drones have struck this facility. As a result of last year's attacks, Russia's oil production dropped by about 10%. This is a clear sign that Ukrainian drones are effectively working, the expert added. He recalls a strike by Ukraine's Air Force on Russian positions in Chumtatsky, Zaporizhia region. Using precision-guided munitions, the Air Force targeted a site where Russian troops had set up a launch pad for drones. While we cannot definitively identify the exact precision-guided munition used in this strike, we know that the Ukrainian Air Force is now employing a range of such munitions. Primarily, we know that Ukrainian MiG-29s and now F-16s are using the GBU-39, a weapon with a glide range of up to 110 kilometers. Additionally, there is the American-made JDAM-ER, which, using satellite navigation, can precisely strike at distances of up to 70 kilometers. We also know that France supplied Ukraine with munitions called Hammer, which are not just bombs, but missile bombs, as they have a motor that allows them to strike Russian targets from distances of up to 70 kilometers when launched from altitudes of 8 to 10 kilometers, the expert added. He says that there are several Ukrainian companies that are actively working on developing their own aviation bombs with similar planning and guided modules. At least several companies are actively involved in this. There has been progress and good results are being achieved. Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdogan met with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenski in Ankara as Kyiv seeks to shore up its position in response to US-Russia talks. A very interesting photo was shared of Erdogan meeting Zelenski. Turkish media shared this photo with the caption, "Turkey's umbrella for Ukraine." It is a valid statement. Zelensky's visit to Ankara aims to show Turkey on his side in possible negotiations with Russia and in building Ukraine's future. This can be evaluated in several contexts. The first is to create an alternative to US-Russia talks through Turkey. Although this seems somewhat unlikely in light of US intervention, Ankara's relations with Moscow and its status as the only successful mediator in the Ukrainian war so far strengthen Kiev's hand against Washington, which is talking to Moscow without it, and increase its chances of avoiding a table where its interests are not taken into account. Secondly, Ukraine may nominate Turkey as one of the participants to strengthen its position at the possible negotiating table. Zelensky has already hinted at this. Third, Kiev wants Turkey to participate in ensuring Ukraine's security after a possible peace. Ankara's inclusion in the process is one of the factors that increases the prospects of support for Ukraine on the Western NATO front. Ukraine has no intention of surrendering to the Trump-Putin talks and is trying to take advantage of all possible options to have a stronger seat at the table. Expressing his satisfaction with the hospitality they received in Turkey and the comprehensive and constructive approach in the negotiations between the two countries, Zelensky said that issues of ending the war in Ukraine cannot be discussed without Ukraine and said, "The Russia-US meeting in Riyadh was a surprise for us. We learned about it from the media." Zelensky emphasized that no mistakes should be made in concluding the Russia-Ukraine war with a reliable and lasting peace, saying, "If these negotiations are fair and Ukraine, America and Europe are at this table, these guarantees will be developed with the participation of all these countries. Of course, Turkey is among these countries. I am grateful to Erdogan for this understanding." Recall Donald Trump said that he is disappointed with Ukraine's position in the context of the conflict with Russia. "They had 3 years. Where did all the money we gave Ukraine go?" Zelensky himself does not know where half of the funds allocated by the United States are. If Ukraine wants to sit at the negotiating table, it needs elections. Zelensky's rating among Ukrainians is 4%. Russia is able to destroy Ukrainian cities, including Kiev, 100% very quickly, but it does not want to do so. The Zelensky administration has allowed the war to continue, Trump said. As Russian forces struggle to maintain their offensive near Pokrovsk, Ukrainians launched a series of precise counterattacks to push them off balance. What followed in Kotlin was a tactical display of ambushes, drone strikes, and armor-supported assaults that left Russian units scrambling to hold their ground. According to Euromaidan Press media outlet, the goal of the Ukrainian forces in this area was to maintain pressure on the Russian troops stationed in the settlement of Kotlin. Russian forces here have been depleted by months of constant assaults in their effort to reach the Pokrovsk-Dnipro highway, located 5 kilometers north of Kotlin, which is the main supply route of Pokrovsk. To undermine the Russian effort to flank Pokrovsk from the west, Ukrainians are launching counterattacks at Kotlin, forcing the dwindling Russian forces to protect their positions in the village. Euromaidan Press says that to achieve this, the Ukrainians kept reinforcing their foothold in the southern part of Kotlin, from which Ukrainians could ambush and engage the Russian forces in close-quarters combat. The main advantage of the Ukrainian forces in this area is the proximity of Kotlin to Pokrovsk, where they have stationed large reserves of soldiers and equipment. This logistics hub, combined with an asphalt road between Pokrovsk and Kotlin, allows Ukrainian forces to quickly deploy their infantry to the settlement using armored vehicles driving at full speed to evade Russian drone strikes. On top of that, Ukrainians have heavy equipment at their disposal, including Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, M113 armored personnel carriers, and tanks, which provide them with high firepower, mobility, and armored protection. Euromaidan Press recalls that, on the other hand, Russians cannot reinforce their efforts here with armored support, as they have no secure crossing point over the Solona River. This causes Russians to only be able to send forth small groups of infantry to either conduct assault operations or reinforce their efforts in the settlement. Unfortunately for Russians, Ukrainians used their armored vehicles to quickly and safely cover the distance between Pokrovsk and Kotlin, deploying their reinforcements while rotating out tired and wounded soldiers. This allowed them to maintain high morale and fresh soldiers in the village, while also temporarily utilizing the firepower of the armored vehicles during the rotations. Furthermore, by observing and striking Russian troops moving to Kotlin across fields to the south, the Ukrainians could anticipate the best moment to conduct the rotations and counter any Russian assaults in time. Overall, the Ukrainians launched several well-organized counterattacks, which successfully thwarted the Russian offensive effort on the western flank of Pokrovsk by uppercutting and eliminating the Russian forces at Kotlin, further consolidating their control in and around the village. Euromaidan Press says that such a series of successful Ukrainian operations will allow them to gradually expand their zone of control and force Russian forces into a defensive posture due to the growing risk of a collapse of their front lines. As time drags on, Russian forces seem increasingly incapable of continuing their offensive on Pokrovsk, signaling that their efforts are stalling and might be close to culmination.